So let's talk a little history first. Somewhere around the beginning of the 20th century, Jews living in the land that had been known as Israel were dominated by foreign occupiers for nearly 2,000 years. But they never gave up hope of being free. And as Britain fought the Ottoman Empire in the midst of World War I, Jewish leaders sought support for the Zionist movement, and they sought that support from the British government. On November 2nd of 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter to the Jewish community declaring His Majesty's government's favorable view for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. So the British government pledged to use their best endeavors to facilitate that objective and to make it come to pass shortly. So over 100 years ago, the Balfour Declaration, as it's called, was the first official step towards establishing the modern state of Israel we know today. The promises from Britain and other world leaders would take a long while to come to total fruition. In 1947, the Jewish people finally received formal approval from, of course, the United Nations General Assembly for the recreation of an independent Jewish state in the land of Israel. Now, according to the UN's plan, the Jews would receive a tiny fraction of the land originally set aside for them by previous agreements. The UN resolution number 180, or maybe it was 1801, I can't remember. It passed anyhow on November 29th, 1947. And although it was minuscule in its offering to the Jews, the Jewish leaders gladly accepted it. But the Arab leaders said no, and they vowed to wipe the Jewish state from the face of the earth, because that's what they do. After 2,000 years of exile and foreign domination, finally the Jewish people were free, to some degree, in their own land. On May 14th of 1948, David Ben-Gurion proclaimed Israel's official independence. The very next day, 5 Arab armies attacked Israel. Now, without international assistance, because Israel had no assistance, not from the US, not from anybody else. Without any assistance, Israel miraculously survived and even gained ground, but they lost over 6,000 people in that war, which was about 1% of its entire population. A whole year of fighting, 1% of their population, boy, they sacrificed. The Arab nations finally agreed to a disarmament agreement with Israel and withdrew. In May of 1967, 5 Arab armies began gathering on Israel's borders, again, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. And they declared their intention to wipe Israel off the map. And the United Nations, along with every ally, refused to help and refused to intervene. Israel knew it needed to strike first, and so it did. On June 5th, the Israeli Air Force destroyed Egypt's planes while they sat on the ground. And 2 days later, the IDF won the battle for Jerusalem. So by June 10th, Israel had defeated all the invaders and won control of huge territories. But like Israel, in hopes of peace with its neighbors, it again returned most of the land in exchange for peace treaties. Did it work? Listen, after winning the 6-day war, Israel now controlled several territories captured by the from the invading Arab nations. So Israel offers to return the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, the Golan Heights to Syria. On June 19th, 1967, they offered to give them back this land, and all they wanted in exchange was peace. The immediate answer? No. And the Arab League's Cartoon Conference in Sudan, they adopted an official position against Israel that is called today the famous 3 no's. No peace, no recognition, no negotiation. Now, I don't know about you, but what that means is you can't talk with these people. There is no discussion. There is no agreement. There is nothing they will do because they'll lie to you, and they can lie. We talked about taqiyya, which is one of the forms of a Muslim's way of lying when it comes down to the advantage of being a Muslim. So when it's to their advantage, they can lie because they can, because that's their religion. They can lie when it's for the good of Allah, who, by the way, is not Jehovah God, by the way. He's not the same God. We don't serve the same God as the Muslims. Anyhow, that's for another day. So for 12 years, the 3 no's prevented all efforts of peace. And to this day, the 3 no's are a major obstacle to establishing any form of peace between Israel and its neighbors. You might remember October 6, 1973. In Israel, the country was quiet and focused on observing the holiest day on the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. Suddenly, the atmosphere was shattered. The IDF was caught unaware, and Egypt, Syria attacked Israel simultaneously on 2 fronts. But here's what happened. I love history. 500 Israeli soldiers faced 600,000 Egyptians in the south, while in the north, 180 Israeli tanks defended against 1,400 Syrian tanks. And guess who won? Israel pushed back the invaders across the borders. 18 days after Egypt and Syria first attacked Israel, the Arab leaders agreed to a ceasefire rather than suffer any further losses. So Israel won the Yom Kippur War. Of course, they lost 2,680 some odd Israeli lives again.